All right, good morning. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. We got a couple of things going on this morning. Going to be switching some slides. I wanted to go ahead and start with wanted to reintroduce a chart that I introduced you all to very early in the semester. As we are going through the review for what's going to be on our summative, also known as the final, wanted to bring this visual back before everybody and ask you if you remember when we started out this way, and I said, I don't know what your process is, right? I don't know how you gather and organize overwhelming amounts of information, but you're going to have overwhelming amounts of information. One of the ways that I do that is I create charts because it helps me organize. So wanted to share mine with you because some of you have shared yours with me. Some of you have adopted this form of, hello? Some of you have adopted this form of organization. Some of you have come up with something even better, right? But some of you may still be trying to figure out how to get all of this information in a way that you can review it and be prepared, plus the other 4, 5, or 6 classes that you may have. So again, just wanted to reintroduce this simple chart. I need everybody to, how about I do this? I can mute. I'll mute everybody. Simple chart, not even a spreadsheet. It's literally a chart in Word that I created, and I just added rows as we went. We started with contributory negligence, had some information about what the rule is on contributory negligence. Also going to need everybody to turn your cameras on. So why don't we stop there and just give everybody an opportunity to get to the cameras. Nice. Perfect. Unless, of course, you're driving. If you're driving, please turn your camera off. So we went through contributory negligence, went through the doctrine of last clear chance, which is a doctrine that's connected to contributory negligence. We then proceeded through comparative negligence. We're focusing specifically on pure comparative negligence. You'll see that I had modified comparative negligence on my chart for the purpose of preparing for the summative. I struck through the comparative negligence 49% because I'm not testing it, right? So if you're keeping a similar chart, it's not that the information is not correct. It's just that it's information that we're not going to cover in the summative assessment, right? Because you can always go in and reverse a strike through. So for the purposes of studying, I just struck that through. Continued on to assumption of the risk, started to use some color because assumption of the risk was a little more complicated in that we have expressed assumption of the risk, and then we have implied assumption of the risk, and under implied assumption of the risk, we have primary assumption of the risk, secondary assumption of the risk, right? So I, again, am offering this to you as an example of one of a gazillion ways that you might want to organize materials, one of a gazillion ways, but this one definitely works. So let's just go through a little bit more. Failure to mitigate. Again, I started to incorporate color only because things got to be a little bit more complicated. With the failure to mitigate, your elements are looking at substantial evidence, something that the plaintiff could have done, The something is not unreasonable. The something has a causal connection. So however you're putting the information together, make sure you're putting it together in a way that you can study from it, that you can benefit from it, that you're able to use it, and hopefully not just in this course, but in others. So let's stop that share. That's enough of that. And let's then go back to what we're actually chatting about today, which is going to be, so let me move some things around here now. All right, so let's go out here. Too many screens open. Go to this one, go to this one, go to that one. Go ahead. Perfect. All right, here we go. What are we going to do today? We are going to pick up from where we left off, which was the review of the materials that are going to be on the summative. So let's share the screen. Let's get back to screen number 2 and let's get started. You should be seeing my screen. It should say failure to mitigate because that's what we're going through. And you know what? Actually, I think we can go back one because I think I added. I did. I added a question for assumption of the risk. So because the question was too long for me to put it in a poll, we'll just take a few minutes, give me time to take attendance, take a few minutes, go ahead and read the prompt, and then we'll see what our answers are going to be. Perfect. If you're ready, I'll go ahead and just give me a thumbs up, and I'll go ahead and move to your options for answers. Thumbs up, thumbs up. Okay, we're waiting on just a couple more people. Miss Owens, welcome. Good to see you this morning. Camera. All right, I see your thumbs up. Making sure. And I'm going to need everybody to turn your cameras on, because according to the Zoom policy, cameras off mean you're not here. Cameras on. All right, let's go to the next slide. Let's see what your options are. Miss Settle, take a stab at it. What do you think the answer should be?
I'm not really sure, honestly. Maybe C.
Okay, tell me why your instinct told you to choose C. Was it a process of elimination, maybe? Was it?
Yeah, because I think it's just because of like the choice that he made.
Okay. Okay, I like it. Can you turn are you driving? If you're not driving, I'm gonna need you to turn your camera on. Miss Jacob, tell me what you think about Miss Settle. Miss Settle chose C, and Miss Settle said she chose C because that seemed to be more in line with Miss Trice. You're doing amazing. Take your time. You can go ahead and turn your camera off. You're doing amazing. Take your time. Get in the building safe. And once you get situated, go ahead and turn your camera back on. Thank you so much for doing that, Miss Trice. Miss Jacob, what do you think? Miss Settle said she wasn't sure, but right, in a testing situation, the worst thing that you can do is to leave it unanswered. You never want to leave a question unanswered, right? So Miss Settle says, I'm not really sure, but I'm going to go with C. Miss Jacob, tell me what you think.
I am driving, so I did not get
Oh,
a full
then
look
stop.
of,
Then
I'm
don't.
sorry.
Please don't. No problem. Thank you for letting me know. Miss Brown, tell me what you think. You like Miss Settle's theory, or do you like a better answer for a different reason? Or what do you think the answer should be?
The answer should be C. I believe the answer is C because if the other party assumes the risk, then they will be barred from recovery because they'll essentially say that you knew the outcome of it and you assumed the risk of it, so you shouldn't be able to recover.
Okay. Miss Settle, your instinct was right. Right? I don't know if that's teaching you, oh my God, I got to answer something. I don't know what to answer. I'm going to put something, I'm going to go with my gut. I don't know. But Miss Brown's explanation of it is absolutely right. Any questions about it? If not, we're going to go ahead and move on. That was just an extra assumption of the risk. I think we've gone over maybe 2 or 3, maybe even 4 assumption of the risk questions. So that might tell you something about if you're going to see it on the final, on the summative. Here's another really quick, just to make sure we haven't lost any yardage. The reasonable person standard, is it objective or is it subjective?
Objective.
Oh, who's talking to me?
That's me, Professor,
Let
and other
me-
people too.
Let me go, because usually the box lights up. It's an objective standard. If anybody thought that it's a subjective standard, you don't have to self-identify, but you might want to talk to the TAs, or you might want to look at some of your materials, again, just so that you can be where you need to be. Failure to mitigate, this was something that we went over, relatively simple. Failure to mitigate is only going to be found in a comparative negligence jurisdiction. What does that mean? That means that if you get a question about a failure to mitigate, the question may not say that this is a comparative negligence jurisdiction, but if it's asking about failure to mitigate, it has to be by nature a comparative negligence jurisdiction. Same for last clear chance doctrine. If you get a question that's asking you a question about the last clear chance doctrine, by its very nature, that tells you that you have to be in a contributory negligence jurisdiction. So remember those things. Contributory negligence, you might see a last clear chance doctrine. Failure to mitigate, you may see that, but it's got to be comparative negligence, right? So number 1, the jurisdiction is comparative negligence. And what is a failure to mitigate? Basically, it's a failure to reduce, to lessen, or at minimum, to make sure that the damages don't get worse, right? It is a duty that you have, a standard of care to yourself, to make sure that the damages that you may have suffered at the negligence of a defendant don't get worse. What does that necessarily mean? That necessarily means that there's already got to be some damages, right? That necessarily means that I must already be injured, and my standard of care to myself is to make sure that those injuries don't get worse. That's what a failure, that's what mitigation is. And if you fail to mitigate, it is going to have an effect on your total damages, right? But in order for the defendant to use this as a defense, because it's an affirmative defense, which means that they've got to prove it. That's what an affirmative defense is. An affirmative defense has to be proven, right? You got to meet the elements. Here are the elements for failure to mitigate. Number 1, there's got to be substantial evidence that supports that there is something, whether it's a continuation of therapy, whether it's an election of surgery, it's got to be something that the plaintiff could have done that would have lessened, right, or that would have prevented the increase of the damages. Doing that thing, whatever it is, cannot be unreasonable. Unreasonable according to who? Unreasonable according to the objective reasonable person standard, right? And there's got to be some causal connection between the thing and the increase in the damages. Got to be causal connection between the thing and the increase in damages. If the defense cannot prove all of those elements, then they don't get to use the failure to mitigate. Done with defenses, that's it. What did we not cover? We didn't cover immunity, right? So no World Trade Center, you don't have to worry about it, right? What did we not cover? We did not cover family immunity. Don't have to worry about it. What do you have to be concerned about? Only the things that we're covering. Right? So now let's get to apportionment of damages. We all love this. We all had the best time ever when it came to, I know your faces are like, yeah, no, not really, but roll with me, work with me. Yeah, this was we had Mr. Marshall looked up at me and said, yeah, okay. I didn't have a good time, but I'll make her feel good. Apportionment of damages. Remember, that's joint and several liability. That's several liability, and that's vicarious liability. So apportionment of damages, joint and several liability, liability, and vicarious liability. Now remember, vicarious liability has two prongs. Vicarious liability can be either respondeat superior, which is employee-employer, or vicarious liability can be motor vehicle ownership. Remember? All right. So that's what we're going to cover in apportionment of damages. What we're going to do today is going to be joint and several liability and several liability. We don't meet Friday, not on Zoom, not in person, because that's part of your Easter break. We do not meet Monday, not on Zoom, not in person. That's part of your Easter break. We will resume our meetings on Wednesday, April 12th, and we'll be in person. Wednesday, April 12th, in person. I'll have the Zoom set up for anybody who needs to come in through Zoom. It's going to be the same Zoom, because initially I thought we would do all of these last ones on Zoom, but we're not. So Wednesday, the 12th, will be in person. Friday, wait. Oh, you know what? Those were the days that I were giving you guys off because you were volunteering for something. So let's just get through the day. I was like, wait. Those are my trials. That's what's going on. All right. Apportionment of damages.
Professor, before you move on.
Yeah.
Could you go back to the slide for the failure to mitigate?
Yep. Hold on just 2 seconds.
The previous one with the elements. Yes, that one. Could you give me an example of the last one, the casual connection between the plaintiff's failure to do the thing and the worsened damages, please?
Yep, I can do better than that. I can give you. Give me 2 seconds. Let me stop my share.
So I have a question on that as well.
Okay, hold on just 1 second. Let me take them one at a time. Failure to mitigate. The case is the Greenwood v. Mitchell case. Do you remember that case, Mr. Ortiz?
I would need like just a brief fact, and I would know which one you're speaking on. Let me go back.
It's the one where he jumped out of the way of a car, got injured, needed surgery.
Yeah, with the arm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that help?
Okay. Similar. All right. I think I kind of get what you're saying.
Or even if you don't get what I'm saying, do you get what the case says? Do you remember the case, right? So if, let me take you back here. Let's just do something. We can do something really quick. Let's share screen. Will it allow me to go down that far? Your screen share is loading. It's loading. All right, it did let me go down that far. Let me move this over. Let me move you guys over. Let's go back to the chart that I said, don't know how you guys are keeping up with all this information, but you need to come up with a system so that all of this stuff makes sense to you. Failure to mitigate, the case on the failure to mitigate, that's the Greenwood v. Mitchell case. And that's the case, right, you can always go back and pull it. You can always go back and look at your briefs on it. You can always go back and look at your notes on it. It's where he had surgery. The surgery improved to some degree, but he also had an in-home regimen of therapy, physical therapy. He did it with one therapist. He started it with another therapist, but he didn't continue it long-term. He filed a lawsuit against the driver of the car. The driver of the car wanted to say, yeah, I'll accept responsibility, but I'm not accepting responsibility because I'm not the proximate cause. The reason that his arm is still injured is because he failed to continue therapy, but the driver was unable to establish that continued therapy would have lessened the injury.
Yes.
Ms. Ortiz?
Yes, ma'am.
There you go. You got it?
Yes, ma'am. I understand now. I was a little confused on it.
Don't be. There's the case, right? Which is why we notate the case. So if there's a doctrine that we don't understand, we don't have to go back through 50 cases. We've got a chart that tells me, oh, that was that case. Let me go back to that case and refresh my understanding of that case. Someone else said they had a question about the failure to mitigate.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, please jump in.
So maybe I miswrote this, but I have your expert testimony draws a line between plaintiff's reasonableness and their failure to mitigate, and substantial evidence is required for. So expert testimony draws a line for the failure to mitigate. Is that a requirement, the expert testimony?
The substantial evidence is what's required. In this medical case where they had dueling experts, yeah, they needed an expert to establish that surgery was the best recovery. And so many weeks after surgery, it's just not going to get any better than that. That could not have been attested to by lay people. So you got to look at your facts.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Devin, you're doing amazing. Go ahead and turn your camera off. So I want to make sure that you're safe. I know that you're en route to get to someplace safe. So go ahead and turn your camera off so you can get wherever it is that you need to go. And then pop back on. All right, so that's failure to mitigate. Everybody good with it? Okay, fantastic. Excellent. Let's stop sharing that screen. So we're going to stop the share here. Nice. We're going to move you guys back over here so that I can see you. There we go. I got you here. And now we're going to go back to the PowerPoint screen 2. Failure to mitigate. I thought I moved you guys. I need you to be on the screen with the camera. Excellent. All right. So there's your failure to mitigate. If I give you a scenario where we're talking about lay people, right? Maybe I give you a scenario where there's no doctors involved. There's no surgery involved. There's no physical therapy involved, right? It's nothing that requires the expertise of someone. Then you're not looking for expert testimony, right, to provide your substantial evidence. right? You don't have experts in everything. Sometimes lay people can provide the information required. But if it's injuries that are healing or not healing, that's generally when you're going to need to start thinking about experts. And that's in life, right? Can I try a case that I need an expert, or can I try the case without an expert? Which way is it going to be the most persuasive? So it's still the same line of thinking. Let me make sure you guys are seeing the screen. Yes, that's fine. See the screen that I want you to see. Yep, failure to mitigate. All right, so we're going back. Questions, apportionment of damages. Let's talk about joint and several liability. Joint and several liability. That is the doctrine that says if there's more than one defendant, concurrent causes, indivisible injuries, and we are in a jurisdiction that allows for joint and several liability, that means that they can share in the paying of the damages, or one can take the burden for all, right? How do I know what I'm looking for? You need to look for something in the fact pattern that gives you more than one tortfeasor, so more than one defendant, indivisible. That means that I can't divide the injury. The injury's to the left leg. And then the second person comes along and the injury's to the left leg. And there's no delineation in that fact pattern. Was it the upper leg or the lower leg or the middle leg, or was it the knee or was it the foot, right? It's an indivisible injury, right? So those are the clues that you're starting to look for. We're going to get deeper into the elements on the next slide. But before I get to the next slide, I want to make sure that you understand that in joint and several liability, we have two ways for reimbursements, if that's what you want to call it, right? If I have a defendant who pays more than their fair share, right, then I have a defendant who can either exercise the doctrine of contribution or exercise the doctrine of indemnification to get back the overage that they've paid. That only happens in joint and several liability. Right, before we move on to the specific elements, I want to make sure you understand contribution, indemnification only happen in joint and several liability. And Mr. Edie, I saw you, I'm going to come right back to you. And it only happens after the plaintiff has been made whole, right? And so until the plaintiff has gotten all of the damages, no defendant can seek contribution or indemnification from the other defendant. What's priority one? Priority one is to make the plaintiff whole. Mr. Edie, you had a question.
Yes, I'm just wondering, for this portion of your exam, will we have to do like the math, like the percent, like break down the percentage?
No, I know, man. I was looking at those questions. I think what I did, Mr. Edie, was actually, there's a couple of them that we're going to test. So let's get to them. I think what I did was I may have done some numbers, like if it's 35% of $1 million, I may have actually done 350,000, but in parentheses, I put that as 35%. So you're really not doing the math, but there's a couple of sample questions on here in a few slides. Let's go through them, and anybody, because I think Mr. Edie is talking about, it's speaking on behalf of a lot of people who are like, wait, I went to law school because I don't want to do math. So if there's any concern with the sample problems that we go through, y'all just let me know. And you don't have to put that on blast. You don't have to put that in the chat. If you want to send me a text and say math is not my best subject and there's really math involved, then I can reconsider that, right? Because this, again, this is to challenge you to strengthen your mastery of the skill, and the skill is not a mathematical skill. Mr. Edie, thank you for that question. So let's get to, here's the elements of joint and several liability. Several tortfeasors, right? So it's more than one, right? What is several? 2, 3, 4, 5. If we're not sure about this, let me go back. If we're not sure about this concept, we can go to the Carolina case. That was the case where the guy had all of this land, and then the railroad comes in, and the lumber company comes in, and the railroad is doing blasting and this and this and that, and the lumber company's cutting down trees and this and this and that. And I think that actually happened over the course of some months, but it was all these different people in doing all these different things. And once everything is said and done, his land is demolished, right? It's just in shambles. And he's like, I'm picking you, I'm picking you, I'm picking you, I'm picking you. So he got as many tortfeasors, defendants, as he could, right? And he wound up settling for Carolina, who said, it's not fair for me to pay all of the damage. And the court said, well, you are a joint tortfeasor, right? Let's go back to this slide. You are a joint tortfeasor. There were concurrent causes. And then remember, we got kind of sidetracked on what's concurrent, what's not concurrent. Indivisible injury, right? Your whole property is gutted. And I don't know if this portion was gutted by these people or if this portion was gutted by those people. What I know is that any one of you could have caused the totality of this damage. Any one of you by themselves could have caused the totality of this damage. As a result, maybe one of you is going to be responsible for paying it out. And that's exactly what happened in the Carolina case. Now, once the plaintiff was made whole, if Carolina chose, they could seek contribution from any or all of the other defendants that they chose. But that was only after the landowner was made whole. So that's joint and several liability. Either party may be held liable together or separate. So let's get to some questions so that we can look at how I put this math together. This one's going to take a little bit of time. Take your time, read through it. I know there's numbers, but don't get distracted by the numbers toward the end. I think it's pretty straightforward. Just read it through. Have a good day. All right. Ready? I'm getting ready to go to the options. And know that looks heavy math toward the end, but hold on, let me just get to the options. Let me just get to the options. Here we go. Does anybody need me to go back to the previous slide so that you can kind of see? And I didn't do a poll on this one because it was too wordy. It didn't fit within the poll. So See it? Miss Stewart is saying, I see it. Miss Stewart is talking to herself. She's like, I got this one, y'all. I got this one. All right, here we go. Miss Stewart, you want to give us the answer? If not, Mr. Edwards is laughing because he's like, I got it. I got it. So if you need some help, Mr. Edwards can help you.
Yeah, co-counsel Edwards.
All right, co-counsel
Hello.
Edwards.
She only did that because she was sitting by me. I'm sorry. Oh, but I'm actually gonna go. Oh, sorry, I'm yelling. I'm actually gonna go with D, the full amount of damages.
Explain. Oh, Miss Hill likes your answer. Miss Hill says, good job, co-counsel. Good job, co-counsel. Miss Lewis is like, I think I like his answer, but I'm not going to give him too much credit. I don't want him to get a big head. Mr. Edwards, tell me why you went with D. Do you need me to go back to the previous screen, or do you want to
no,
stay?
no, ma'am. I have a picture of it.
Okay.
What I determined was that since the state was insolvent and could not pay its share of the award, that award would have to be assumed by one of the parties.
Right.
And in joint and several liability, someone could assume all of the.
That's the answer.
Fault.
That's the answer. Right. And so this is what I want you to practice doing. Don't get distracted when you see numbers. Don't get distracted when you see numbers. Let me tell you, lawyers are some of the best mathematicians that walk the face of the earth because they know how to count money. So don't ever tell somebody you don't like math. Ever, ever, ever. You like math, right? We can calculate it. We can multiply it. We can divide it. We can bill it. We can set up payment plans with it. We love math, right? So don't get distracted when you see numbers. Get through the end of the question, hold it together, and then look at your options for answers before you lose it. All right, Ms. Giampo, yes, ma'am.
Hi, yeah. So I think it kind of loses me. I thought whenever something is joint and several liable, well, you have joint and several liabilities whenever they can't like divide out the percentage of who was at fault.
Mm-hmm.
But here they did. So why would it not just be several liability?
Because it's telling you that it is, let me find it. I had my hand on it, blah, blah, blah.
It
blah.
tells us the defendants were found joint and severally liable for
That's it.
damages.
That right.
Even
And
though they were
so
able to get the percentages.
the defendant's proportionate responsibility really was a distraction for the math.
Okay.
Right. It was really a distraction for the math. Once you saw that it was jointly and severally liable, you could have really stopped reading right there.
Okay. So as long as it says that, just no. Don't, I guess it's like everything else like a red herring, as you call it.
Yeah, and I think that's what they called it when I was in law school 500 years ago, and I just adopted the language. I hadn't come up with something better, but it's a distraction.
Okay.
Right, and so even though we did this, the joint and several liability is really where you stop in the analysis for this question.
Okay.
Got it?
Yes, thank you.
Got it. All right, fantastic. So Mr. Eady and all of those that Mr. Eady presented that question on behalf of, there's math, but there's not really math, if that makes sense, right? So even if this wasn't joint and severally liable and you were really looking at proportionate shares, while I might give you the figure, 3.5 million, 6 million, 7.5 million, I'm really going to give you the percent. So that's going to help you connect the dot, right? It's not going to be anything that's going to require people pulling out pieces of paper or phones or anything like that. Let's try this one.
Can you go back to the question, please, real quick?
Absolutely. Ready? Thoughts? If you need me to go back, I can go back. And I see some of you guys taking pictures. That's, you know me, I'm fine with that. But I will post this as soon as we get done. So you're gonna have it. Right, but however you want to do it. Ultimately, the drivers are held jointly and severally liable. We're in a comparative negligence jurisdiction. Why does it matter that we're in a comparative negligence jurisdiction? That means that she can be partially responsible and still walk away, right? This isn't contributory negligence, so she's not barred. So we know she's going to walk away with something. So we know that D is not going to be the answer, right? So we can quickly eliminate D and then get it down to A, B, and C. Well, what's the difference between A, B, and C? A says she gets $5,250 from each driver, which now comes up to $1,050, okay? B says she gets a total of $5,250, and she can do that individually or severally or however. C says the woman may collect $2,625 from each driver individually. Is C wrong? It's not wrong. C isn't wrong. She can collect $2,625 from each of them individually, but B's more right. Why is B more right? Because she can collect $2,625 from both of them. She can collect $5,250 from one of them. She can write joint and several, joint and several. Got it? Joint and several. We know that A is not right because what do we know about joint and several? You can never walk away with more than the actual damage. Right. And in A, if she had gotten $5,250 from each driver individually, she's walking away with $10,500. Joint and several would never allow that to happen. Right. It looks like math, but you're really not having to calculate anything. Does that make sense? I see Miss Hill, I see Miss Richard, I see Miss Lewis, I see Miss Primus, Miss Bettis. Tell me where I'm losing you. Mr. Horton, Mr. Murph, Miss Carpenter, you guys good? Okay. All right. Let's do the last one before class ends. Both drive negligently, injuring pedestrian who's also negligent. We're in a jurisdiction that applies joint and several liability. And do you see it? Traditional rules of contributory negligence. How much does the plaintiff get? Or how much can she collect from D1? What does contributory negligence tell you? She's getting nothing. She's getting nothing. She ain't getting nothing from D1. She ain't getting nothing from D2. She's getting absolutely nothing because it's jurisdiction of contributory negligence. She's barred from recovery. Can she assert the last clear chance doctrine? If she can prove the elements of the last clear chance doctrine, but that's not part of the question. Got it? All right, that's it. Let's stop there for today. We then get into several liability, which is the Piner case. I'm going to post this now so that you guys can have it. And then I'll go ahead and once the video stops converting, Ms. Giampo.
Just for clarification, you said we do have in-person class on the 12th, or you said no because of your other classes?
Yeah, right. Because so I got it, because I was going to say, yeah, let's meet. But then I was like, no, I said we weren't going to meet. Yeah, I just created a kerfuffle. Because we don't meet on Friday. We don't meet on Monday. I'll do this. Check this out. I'm going to be at school in the room at 10 o'clock on Wednesday, the 10th. I will open up a Zoom room. And if there are people in the room or if there are people on the Zoom, I will address whatever question you want addressed. I will go over whatever it is you want to go over. I will work through whatever it is you want to work through. And I'll do the same thing on Friday. I'll be in the room. I'll open up the Zoom room. If there's people in the room on the 14th at 10 o'clock and there's people on the Zoom, I'll address whatever you want me to address. I'll be in person and I'll be on Zoom. So why don't we leave the 12th, next Wednesday and next Friday? They're going to be open classes. I will be present on campus in our room at 10. Come or stay if you're already there. If you want to chime in through Zoom, same link, chime in, and class will be whatever you want it to be. Come with your specific questions, come with your concerns, whatever you might have. That's how we'll do it. Ms. Giampo, I hope that was helpful.
Yes, ma'am. It was very helpful. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
So that's what we're going to do. Let your brains breathe. I know none of you are. Everybody's cramming. Try to take care of yourself. Make sure you're eating. Make sure you're hydrating. I know I sound like a mom. I am. But we need you for the long haul. We need you to get over this obstacle and then be ready for the next leg, right? We need you for the long haul. All right. Thank you, guys. Very nice. So we'll stop that share.